Good morning, evening, and welcome to the call. My name's Lauren Chung, and I'm the CEO of Teneo's Strategy and Communications Advisory business in Asia Pacific. I am joined today by Ginni Rometty. Ginni needs absolutely no introduction, but please just allow me a moment to do just that. So Ginni is a leader, innovator, and convener who believes that how we work and lead is as important as what we achieve. As the ninth chairman, president, and CEO of IBM, Ginni transformed the 100-year-old company, reinventing 50% of its portfolio, building a $25 billion hybrid cloud business, and establishing IBM's leadership position in AI and quantum computing. She drove record results in diversity and inclusion and supported the explosive growth of an innovative high school program, PTech, to prepare the workforce of the future in more than 28 countries. Through her work at the Business Roundtable, she helped to redefine the purpose of the corporation. Today, Ginni is a champion of skills-first learning, hiring, and advancement, a movement to connect more people without college degrees with jobs. In 2020, she co-founded 110, a coalition of companies and educators committed to upskilling, hiring, and promoting 1 million Black Americans without four-year degrees by 2030 into family-sustaining jobs and careers. She is the author of the best-selling book, Good Power, Leading Positive Change in Our Lives, Work, and World. I'm going to try and show you here. I've got the backdrop on, but I do my best. And it's a moving combination of memoir, leadership lessons, and big ideas. I've just finished the book this week, Ginni, and as someone in consulting, I just took so much from it. It was just a wonderful read. So the book shares milestones from Ginni's life and career while redefining power as a way to drive meaningful change in positive ways for ourselves, our organizations, and for the many, not just the few, a concept she calls good power. So Ginni serves on multiple boards, including JP Morgan Chase and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and was named Fortune's #1 most powerful woman, not once, but 3 times in a row. And lastly, but very importantly, Ginni is a senior advisor to Teneo. Ginni, delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you, Lauren. And I'm very happy to be here. You're in a part of the world I love. In fact, I've been to Asia twice in the last 4 months even. So it's nice to be with hopefully some old friends listening.
I'm sure. Thank you. And so Ginni, what I thought we'd do is we'll spend the next sort of 45 minutes exploring some of the central themes in your book and really honing in on how you led some major moments of transformation, but not just within IBM, but actually in society more broadly, leveraging this concept of good power. We will then open the floor to questions in the last 15 minutes of the call. And so for all of you on the call, please do add your questions into the Q&A tab as they come to mind, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the call. So Ginni, let's start with the word power. It often sort of brings up more negative associations and connotations, but how do you define power? And can you talk us through how you see the difference between good power and bad power?
Okay, well, we can start there, but I should back up a second. Everything that I'm going to talk about tonight is what I call revisionist history, meaning it wasn't that I had a brilliant idea along the way and that's what I did. It's just now that I can reflect back, and I've been able to work with so many great, either work for or with or as clients, great people that, I mean, I've had opportunity few people have to learn from. And so all about what I'm going to say is from all the people that I have met. I feel like I'm a composite of them. And so again, revisionist history, not some like brilliance a couple decades ago. And the idea of good power, which it's probably a good way to start our conversation, but we won't really just focus on sort of theoretical things. But how the book came to be and how it got a name like Good Power and the concept was, as I was retiring, people would say, look, there's so few women in technology and so few that have done what you've done and had your background. Why don't you write a book? And I said, no interest. And to your point, though, and it took me a couple of years to write it. So go back a few years. I just felt there was so much so many negative examples that I did end up thinking, what could I share with people that would be lessons learned, that you can do really hard things, but do them in a positive way, that I had learned that from so many people over the years. And so to me, the difference between good and bad power, good power is a way to do a tough thing, but love conflict and tension. So it likes tension. It doesn't divide people. I felt good power is something that's done respectfully, not disrespectfully. And I felt that it's something that you could celebrate progress, not perfection. Everything I've ever worked on, if you really only strive for perfection, you alienate people and you never make progress in the meantime. So that was a concept that we just kind of called good power. And I also wanted to communicate something else to everyone listening. And again, as I reflect back, I could tell that over time, your power grows. When you're sort of setting out on a career, it's really more about yourself. In the middle, it's about some point you quit caring about yourself and you care about other people. And in the third is you really can take those lessons and apply them to society. So sort of a me, we, and us. And that's really what I wanted to communicate. And I think for all of us, it starts. I mean, my own childhood, my father had abandoned our family and left us without a home and without money. And so right from the beginning, I sort of realized that my mother actually had power to change a situation when she had nothing else. She had nothing, no education, no money, no home, no food. Yet she changed that for us. And so that's why I go back to the beginning about what could I share with people. And in my view right now, good power is needed in the world we live in today. And how people change things, you said it, Lauren, when you're introducing me, I think matters as much as what they do.
Thank you for that. And just reflecting on some of what you've just said, I found through your book this concept of how you view the stages in your career, the me, the we, the us, to be incredibly powerful. I want to just dive a little bit deeper on this concept. And there's obviously so much going on in the world today, and not all of it positive. So how has our world changed in ways, as you reflect on it, that makes good power a mindset that's so urgently needed by our leaders, corporate and
Yeah.
other?
Well, for one, I think it's polarized and it just continues to get more polarized it's not just in America, it's other countries where you're with me or you're against me. I think the issue now is that so many problems are so large that if you don't believe you can actually change them, people give up. And that's really what one objective I wanted to solve with the book was to say, hey, look, do not give up. Do not wait for governments to do something. Do not wait for others. You'll be surprised at a private citizen what you can accomplish by working on, pieces of a problem. You can make societal change. So there's big problems. It's a polarized world. And I think everybody here listening struggles with, which I had to struggle with in reinventing IBM, balancing short and long term. So it's all of these yin and yang sort of situations that are out there today. And that's why, to me, it felt very timely, right? That in this moment, I got convinced that maybe I had learned enough over these years that there were some things that people could benefit from my lessons.
Can we delve a little now into, so there are 5 principles of good power. What are they? And then after, I'd love to explore a little bit more around the principle of stewarding good tech, because I know that this is something that you feel incredibly passionate about and is something the world very much needs.
Yeah. So this will be our only sort of academic piece of this. I just, again, when I wrote a book, I only wrote it if it's going to help people, right? Because to write a book like this, you have to be very vulnerable and share your mistakes, what you learned from them, so others can actually see what to do. So as I reflected back on when I did really tough things or I witnessed others do tough stuff, there seemed to be sort of 5 things that went into play every time. Okay, these are the 5 principles of good power, which I'll do fast. The first one is, if you're going to change something important, be sure that you are in service of something. That is way different than serving something. It means it's not transactional. It means I care that Lauren gets her objective met. And then one day, as a result of it, I'll meet mine. But it is not transactional. And so it's like I use an example of a waiter. a wait person. You go in a restaurant and look, they don't know what you're going to tip them. They hope if they give good service and they make the whole night enjoyable, not just bring you food, that they'll end up with a tip, a bigger tip in some parts of the world than they would otherwise. And so this idea of be in service of something, because when you're going to do something hard, it's not enough to say, oh, we're going to make this amount of money or we're going to get this product. People want to do something for a bigger reason. And certainly for IBM, I would learn to have to take the workforce back to what that essential reason was. We do mission critical work, right? We are essential to making the really important things happen. That's why they're there. So be in service of was the first one. So clarify what you're in service of. The second one is you've got to build belief around it, which simply means speak to people's heads and hearts. I think the days of being able to just dictate or say something or speak just factually are over. You have to get people to voluntarily want to do something. The third big principle I learned, because as much as people want to change something, know what should endure. So know what to change, but what should endure, even if modernized, which has everything to do about managing tension and loving tension. And the fourth principle was, okay, no matter what, you're all a tech company now. So be a steward of good tech. And simply put, that means manage the upside and the downside in parallel. And then above all, the fifth kind of underlying principle was resilience. I don't know anybody who's done something hard that didn't have a huge reservoir of resilience. And I had a view of what it comes from, because I think you can build it. And it comes from relationships and your attitude, both of which are in your control.
Can we talk a little bit more about building belief? It's quite top of mind for me. I'm here in Tokyo today and have been meeting with a range of clients and companies here, and through change, through introducing a new purpose, through going through some sort of corporate transformation, building belief and a following for that change is one of the major challenges that I kept hearing this week. Can you reflect maybe on your time at IBM? Was there a particular time where you really had to lean into this principle, and can you talk us through how you did build belief in some major change?
Yeah, I can speak to both the soft and the hard skills to build for it, because to me, when I think of building belief, I said you speak to your head and your heart. And probably the first time in my career where I saw that really come into play in a huge scale was when we acquired PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting. And IBM had a consulting business. They were both very large. So as I say, they were hearts, not parts, that had to be integrated. And as opposed to buying manufacturing, which, okay, the assets can't walk out of the building. When you buy a people business, as you well know, you run one, the assets can walk right out the door. And so it would be the first time I would really, truly understand that appealing to someone's head and heart. And so at the time, one of my mentors was Ken Chenault, who ran American Express. And Ken always had a saying that said, you've got to get people, you've got to be honest and paint reality, but give hope. And it would begin to solidify in my mind that this isn't about rah, rah, isn't this great? This is about being vulnerable, speaking from your heart, and factual. And I think many people are very uncomfortable with speaking vulnerably about how does something feel or what do they believe about it. Yet that's what builds followership. The more vulnerable you are, the more followership you build. And it feels counter because you think, well, followership, they want someone, who knows all the answers to everything. And that just isn't true. And so that idea through that merger, which by the way, in the industry, there'd been 5 others, they'd all failed. So we were number 6. I'm like, perfect. I get to be the 6th. This is either going to be good or really bad. It turned out to have a very good ending. But that idea to be able to talk to people from both their head, okay, here's the facts, where we are, but from their heart, your heart and theirs, to motivate them, that there's always 2 sides to every business situation like that. And that to me was about building belief, because you want people to voluntarily say, I am going to put in all this discretionary energy to make a merger work, right? And you don't want them to do it because you told them to do it. And so that to me was really, I think it's a huge thing. I know through IBM's transformation, I would have to do this for a decade And back to resilience, you would for a decade, because in a long journey, and whenever anybody tries to do something hard, they're never fast and there's always setbacks. And so that idea of being able to speak to people's heads and hearts at the same time, to me, is one of the keys to building that followership. And I wish I'd done it earlier in my career. I think it's not a feminine trait. It's a feminine trait, but not a woman thing, is what I'm trying to communicate.
It's incredibly powerful. I think, as you know, we work with leaders, and one of the areas that we really work with them on is their communication, like their stakeholder engagement. I think that there is this tendency to want to show that they have all the answers and that they're in control, whereas, as you know, there are periods of vulnerability, and it does require a belief and that something will materialize in the right way. So that vulnerability, that authenticity in your engagement and your communications, I think is an incredibly powerful sort of lesson for us. I know I want to come back to AI because the other vulnerability and anxiety I think that exists at the moment is around the implications and impact of AI on business models, on jobs. Um, Going back to your good tech principle, can you share sort of any perspective on or advice on how to leverage and build AI into business in a way that drives the right economic returns, but also does good in the world?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. So
I thought
if
so.
everyone listening is really thinking about this topic, it's so top of mind right now on AI. But you'll remember now, I wrote this book. I mean, it takes a long time to write a book. So this is several years before now the advent of generative AI, right? And this is before Chat GPT. All this is written and published. So I, though, was one of the early pioneers of AI. Sometimes I say great idea, maybe not exactly the right timing there. It was well over a decade ago. But the things I learned then are still true today. And I'll then bring them to current day. But my view is, for when I said be a steward of good tech, you manage the plus and the minus of everything. We didn't do that with things like social media, right? We focused on its positive. We knew there was a bad underbelly, but we didn't deal with it till now. And now you see what we have to deal with. So with with AI in total, I think you've really got to step back and say, now, what is the goal of AI, right? Because let me step back a second. This is not going to be about technology, what I'm going to tell you. Everything about AI is going to turn out to be all around the one topic of trust. Is how to build trust with this technology, is whether this is going to be a good thing or bad thing for us. It will be an issue of trust, not an issue of technology. And so what I say by that is I learned early days, a couple things. One is healthcare. I worked on healthcare and AI early on. Even a decade ago, AI was better than a human at many different things in medicine. But something very important I watched with professional people, which is now what you see with ChatGPT. Their very first question is, well, who trained it? Why is that the answer? Is it explainable to me? Can't do that with the current generation of tech yet. Okay, first point. Second point, I watched how humans, individual patients reacted. They said, whoa, someone said this technology could be wrong, 10%, 15%. They're like, that's a lot. This is my health. You're like, okay, how wrong do you think your doctor is? Human doctors are wrong. I won't say maybe not yours, but there are some that are wrong those amounts. But what I recognized was your tolerance for the more important the issue, your tolerance for error goes way, way, way down. Okay. So now bring this forward to current world of Chat GPT. I think if I'm running a company today, I would be so clear about the goal of what I am putting this technology in for. Somewhere along the line, people said it was to replace man. I don't believe that, and I've never believed it. I believe it's to help you and I make better decisions. It's to augment mankind. In fact, I believed it so strongly, I actually tried to give it another name. When we started, I called it cognitive computing. That meant like helping you think. Okay, now horrible name, okay? But it was to get away from all the bad connotation of, people replacement. That was not the goal of it. To me, the goal of this technology is to make humans better. And so when you go to roll it out in your company, think about that. You get a choice of how you're going to roll it out. So many people speak of automation, which it will automate things, no doubt, and it'll replace a part of certain jobs. But you get a chance to say to people, no, how I roll it out matters. And it's to make the people I have better. And there may be fewer of them because of the productivity. I understand that. But the goal will make a difference. So that's point one. The second thing I learned is the rollout will make a difference. And part of that is because, it took Netflix 3.5 years to get to 1 million users. It took chat 5 days. And it was just unleashed without any preparation of the world, right? Didn't know what, trust it, don't trust it. Is it right? Is it wrong? And we're going to see this now with the elections around the world, right? All this misinformation. People are going to get very fearful and not want to trust this. So if I'm in a company, the rollout matters. And by that, I mean, I'd pick areas that tolerance is not an issue, meaning pick low risk areas where it goes in. Treat yourself like you would if you were a bank and say, okay, I'm going to be audited and I'll be liable if this is wrong. Act that way. And so start in all the places that, you can do and help people do a better job, but without the high risk areas that you're going to go into. Those will be the last mile you'll go touch. So I think how it's introduced, how you train people, familiarize it with them, and so that they're not afraid. Henry Kissinger said, if people don't understand something, they fear it or they revolt. And I think that's very true. And that's what could happen with these technologies if you don't. So I think how it rolls out would really matter to me. And then how I govern it, to my point a second ago. I mean, I would be sure I had governance on it. How's it trained, right? Am I confident about the data? Would I be liable for certain things? If you can answer those, and you should go full steam ahead, but in that context right now, of what it's good at and what it's not. Generative AI, and there's different kinds of AI, is really good at ideation, not so good at problem solving. So, I mean, people are going to have to learn, where does it apply? Where does it not apply? I'm sure everybody's had their own experiences, right, with this. I can remember when it very, 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 very time first came out, I was showing my husband. So I said, okay, let's look up, who's Mark Rometty? My husband's name is Mark. And the first thing it did, now this is back 2 generations, first thing it said was, well, he ran IBM and everything he did to run IBM. So he was delighted. He's like, oh, finally, some machine is giving me credit for all my hard work, but it just proved it had bias. It figured it was a man. Okay. It wasn't a him. It was a she, And so now that's all been fixed. But my point is, right, you can't just trust everything. So, how it trains is mattered. Is explainable? It all matters. So good tech to me means if I'm going to roll it out, I'm really thinking about all this. I'm preparing my workforce, right? Everybody to not be afraid of it. I'm putting it in knowing every time my customer or my people use it, I want to build trust. I want to make them better, right? So the goal of it, the areas I picked to start, I'd go full steam ahead. It's just I'd be choiceful about what I did. That's not like a speech.
No, but it's such an important topic, and that is really important insight. So preparing the workforce, being clear on what the goal of the technology is, the rollout is critical, and the
governance. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the governance, because you see on the inside of many companies, and some of which you're on boards and just engaged with. Is this being done well? Is the governance infrastructure to support AI introduction to business models? Is it developing?
Developing, I would say, and I think you guys have done surveys on this, Lauren, and others that show everyone's full steam ahead, but they're not quite comfortable. They know how to govern it within their own company. And I think the irony is we're a little bit back to having to have centralized governance over it while it's so new. And so, am I breaking copyrights? Am I breaking laws? Am I doing, am I giving wrong? And if you let all these million flowers bloom, you could get in some trouble on it. So that's why I think you actually need some centralized governance over the models in what you're doing and the provisioning of the models, particularly in these, you will forever. But I mean, you really do need to start with that. And I think we're used to new technologies, just letting them bloom in a million places and see what we learn, which is typically right, but not when it comes to the models. I think you have to have central governance over them. So it's a little bit back to the past of some central governance needed over this technology.
All right, so I'm just a reminder to everyone on the call. Please do pop your questions into the Q&A tab because we're coming to you in about 15 minutes or so. So, Ginny, the topic of our discussion today is really sort of leading through transformation. So, I wanted to go back to IBM. And back to, I know we don't want to be too theoretical, but back to the sort of the good power principles and talk about the reinvention of IBM and how you leaned on those principles and as you led that reinvention and maybe some examples of leading through really difficult, hard but critical change at IBM.
Okay, so I think what I could share with people that I hope some, those listening can learn from. I mean, I would arguably run IBM through its most tumultuous period of change. Had it done very well up until this was 2012 when I took over. Had done very well, and in fact, people had great skills in the moment, but they did not have the skills for the future, and we didn't have a platform for the future. So there's a lesson in staying in an old model too long, right? And so by the time 2012 would roll around, there would be new competitors or just new tech companies. They've been going 10, 15 years already, right? So they're now becoming formidable. If I just set the context, there's mobility, there's social, big data, there is AI, there is cloud computing. So it's not just one technology. There's so many at one time going on. So when I say my biggest lesson, and let me parse it into a couple pieces for you, is learn what should change, but what must endure. Because when you're under that kind of pressure to change, the pressure is immense to change and change fast and change everything. IBM's got the largest pension in the world, millions of people you take care of, big businesses around the world. So you've got many stakeholders, a huge retail shareholder base. So you've got stock shareholders, you've got investors, you've got a huge pension, you've got huge retirees, you've got your own employees, you've got the countries in the world's most important companies as your clients. So you feel that pressure intensity to change. So when I say know what must change, but know what must endure, let me start there and then move to probably the two even more important pieces. But those are what people first talk about. In the know what must change, my lesson there was no matter the more difficult the problem, the more important there was for you to find a third way through it. So let me explain. So know what to change. As an example, IBM is really the father, godfather, whatever you'd like to say, of the semiconductor industry. Much talk of chips. You've got TSMC in Taiwan, et cetera, Samsung up in Korea. You've got the chips starting up in Japan again, with the new venture up there. And so, but, as you now are all well familiar, a new chip plant is $20 billion, $10 to $20 billion to put up. That's not our main business. Hardware is 10, 15% of the business. It's a critical piece. So I had shareholders who are like, get out of that business. I had clients who are like, no, it runs our mission critical work. You can't get out of it. So I couldn't afford to be in it. And I couldn't afford to stay out of it. Right. And so, or to get out, I couldn't afford to stay in it, couldn't afford to get out of it, depending on who you were. So when I say find a third way through, my biggest lesson was, we did research, development, manufacturing, all three. I won't teach you all about chips, but those of you that do complex manufacturing, sometimes when you do all three, I shall just say, you can be sloppy in some pieces and fix it at the end manufacturing piece. Well, ours were tightly integrated, R&D and manufacturing. Well, it took us a long time, but we finally figured out how to re-engineer what we did and that we could do R&D and we could outsource the manufacturing, right? Which is where all the capital was required. That would allow us then the money to invest in AI and cloud. So we had to sit in a really tough spot for a long time because a lot of work had to be done to make that happen, to find a third way through. So the only answer wasn't keep it or sell it. It was actually re-engineer how you build these things, and then you could split this apart. And so that to me was a phenomenal example of whenever you look at a problem, quit looking at the two extremes as the answer and don't compromise. But you can often find a third novel way through the problem if you sit in it long enough. So that would be one thing I would learn about change. The other part I would learn about is what should endure, because when you're under a lot of pressure to change, you change everything. And I can remember a client. Oh, Lauren, you know me a little bit. I'm very competitive. We were bidding on some crazy little project on marketing or something. And a client said to me, like, why do you even care about this? And he said, why don't you just be the best IBM you can be? And what he was saying, and he's like, you run my mission critical work. Like, who cares about this? And I was like, you're right. And in that moment, it wasn't just that moment, but it would lead me, I would divest a good 10, $15 billion of businesses that were not close enough to the core of what we did. And that this idea of, yes, modernize yourself, but you've got to be adjacent to your core of what you really are. We're a mission critical guy. Okay. I'm not a consumer guy. I'm not a consumer cloud, which is what took us into hybrid cloud. Which meant we can connect all your clouds. It gave us the conviction to spend $34 billion to buy Red Hat. But that idea of know it should endure. So I knew it should endure then. Yes, I'm the mission critical guy. Okay, it's got to endure, but be modernized, right? So yes, I need to be a cloud, but I need to be a hybrid cloud. And that thought, I think, is a really powerful one. So finding a third way through, and this idea about, know what should endure, but modernize it. Okay. Now, I say that's what everybody always wanted to talk about, the portfolio. Even when you introduce me, you talk about the, 25 billion of cloud, da, da, da. I think though, my toughest lessons were not that. And it's really the heart of the book, because it wasn't just what we did as a company, but it was how the work got done. And I think that is going to face so many companies, and especially new companies, because you will eventually get big and scale. And what I mean by how, like, we would be big, but we'd have to be fast. We were complex, but in this world, you can't be. Even in a B2B business, you have to be consumer oriented. And so that consumerism and speed had to go into everything that we did. And that to me would be my most profound learning, is how to change how people worked, how they worked. So look, now it's more commonplace to talk about design thinking and agile. But 10 years ago, on a scale of 500,000 people, it was not. I think we're still the largest example of all of those methods at scale implemented in a company. But it was the only way to get speed. Is speed and ease of use, ease of doing business into a company. And that would be more profound than almost what we did, right? So you can pick the what, but if you can't change the how, it won't matter. And then with that goes people's skills. And that would take me down the path of completely changing how we hired, to hire for one thing first and foremost, and it was people's willingness to learn. Because again, when we were in so much intensity to change, the first thing you do is hire many experts from outside. I affectionately called them shiny objects, shiny object people. And it was not meaning to be negative. It was meant they knew all the new. Problem is, they didn't know how banks ran. They didn't know how airlines ran. So they were breaking things. Go fast and break is not a good motto for some of those businesses. And then current employees will go, I can actually learn those new things quite well. And it was really, I'm going to condense everything, but it would say, whoa, 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 quit hiring people for their exact degree or subject. Hire somebody who wants to learn. And I think that is actually the secret to a CEO today. It's a secret to anybody. It would be the number one characteristic I'd look for in a new CEO, would be them to be an Olympic learner. That would be more than anything else. It would be than their experience. It would be to be a learner. And it would become the number one thing we hired the whole workforce for, and to this day. So change and endure, except, okay, that was all interesting, but how work got done, and then the skills of the people was more profound at the end of the day. And those are the things people never talk about. I mean, I share that in the book a lot, because I said, I would tell the workforce over and over, come on, we got to go faster, go faster, go faster. And, 2 years ago by, and I'm like, the numbers aren't changing and they look tired. And back to being vulnerable, I said to the workforce, this isn't fair to do to you, because it's leadership's job to change the way work gets done in a company. Only I can remove layers, change decision rights, put in new tools, all the investments for it. It isn't fair to ask the team to run a marathon in hiking boots. That is not fair. And as I said that to them, right? That's not fair. And that would lead us down this whole other path then.
I've just written down higher Olympic learners. I'm going to put that on the top of my notebook, but it's so incredibly true, and ever
It
more
is so
so
true.
today with just the rate of change that we see in the world, and it exists everywhere, but out here in Asia, that just the pace of new technology developments, the way the markets are moving. You just need teams that are open to disruption, and are willing to change and evolve the way they
I
work.
know, it sounds like I don't mean it in an academic way. You can test for this. I mean, there are ways, there are questions, there are ways to look at this that, and if you do, by the way, you'll open up brand new talent pools because you'll throw away your old sort of paradigms of the kind of requirements people have to have. And you will be surprised at the new pools of talent that are out there.
Absolutely. I'm going to sneak in one more question, Ginny, before, because we've got a number of questions from the floor.
Okay.
I a part of your book that really resonated with me. I don't run a business the scale of IBM, that's for sure. But this concept of resilience, and how you develop that. Can you talk to us a little bit about how your resilience, how that muscle developed for you, and any advice that you would have for others in terms of how to foster resilience in their leadership?
Yeah. So this is a very personal topic, right? Of resilience. You use the word develop a muscle. And Lauren, I'd be curious of your view on this. I view strongly you can develop the muscle. I watched it over, and now as I reflect back, I can see the difference in my own resilience over decades. And I would first tell you, even before I even thought about words like resilience, I had to reframe risk in my own mind. Sort of my first third of my career, I would always be nervous about a new job. I would hem and haw and not take it and think of all the reasons I couldn't do the job and that I wasn't prepared and that every change, every position was risky. And one day my husband had been offered a big job and and I told the person I want to go talk to my husband about it. And my husband said to me, do you think a man would have answered a offer of a new job that way? And I said, no, you're right. And he said, I'm not on gender. I'm more on reframing risk because I see this movie over and over with you. You're so nervous about it. Then you take the job, 6 months, you're ready to do the next thing. Why do you do this? And he said, you got to reframe risk, that with risk comes growth. And it kind of get paraphrased as one of my most famous quotes. I'm like so quoted on this, but that growth and comfort never coexist. And this has a lot to do with resilience because you start to look at any uneasy position as a growth opportunity instead of a problem. And this would begin to scale for me over years and years, that I would look for things that I was uncomfortable with, or the more difficult the situation I would want to, because everything looked like a growth opportunity to learn something. And so I have found that to be true no matter what country I'm in. Men, women around the world, it's a universal truth. This point of growth and comfort. Well, if you will always be uncomfortable, but you will come out another end a better person. So that's kind of my underlying view of resilience. But I do speak of two other sides of it, and one is about relationships because I think it's a very misunderstood area, and I think people have misconceptions about things like networks. So I felt relationships were essential to resilience. For one reason, they gave me perspective to solve problems. So the more varied the relationships, the better, but they had to be built well before you needed them. And they had to be built by what you give someone, not by what they give you. And I think, people think networking is just who you know, or did I meet these people? That's not it. If early in, I once worked for someone very early, and he said to me, when someone asks you for help, you give it to them. And that one day that will all come back to you. And I can't tell you how that is absolutely true 90% of the time. And so so I viewed relationships as having such a wide stable of them. I mean, from government to entertainer, clients, family, ages, didn't matter to me. I viewed it, I could learn from everyone. And if you act like you can learn from someone, they will be your mentor. The words will never be used that way. But if you ask questions and listen, people will be invested in your success. And so that idea of that's one place then to get resilience, because these people will say to you, don't look at it that way. Or they'll say, like, why are you worried about that? Or no, look at it this way. People that will give you all these different, perspectives on things. So that to me was a huge reservoir of resilience, was that, including friends and family. All right. So I speak a fair amount about it's not the quantity of time you give them, it is the quality of time you give them that really matters. That was one. The second most interesting part of resilience, I think, is your attitude, and you control it. And this is why I speak a fair amount about my personal life. I mean, I watched my mother. There was actually my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, all had horrible tragedies in their lives. Never complained. Always a way forward. Always a way forward. And so you can control that. So critics, when you do something as hard as you'll have a lot of critics. I didn't ignore them. I would listen, but I didn't let them define me, right? I'd always listen. People go, why do you listen to that? I said, well, I want to see if there's an ounce of truth in something here. Because if there is, I'm going to change. I'm going to listen to it. The rest, okay, fine. Ignore. So don't let it define me, but I would listen. And so I think your attitude around critics not defining you, I think it's an attitude around conviction of what you believe. I mean, there were some times, this is a tough journey for IBM to bridge from one era to the next. And my little nephew would say, Auntie, sometimes they're not very nice to you on television, My mom would be like, yeah, I told her, hey, turn it off. I'll tell you when to turn it back on. You can turn it back on now. And so it's just, you've just got to believe in what you're doing, and then, kind of control what you can control. And so that attitude to me was a super, super important piece. I mean, and things I didn't have to, many people I speak to, I was lucky. I've had a husband 45 years. He takes care of a lot of stuff I never touch. Now, I can't care how it gets done, okay? But as long as it gets done, I learned long ago to quit caring. He once told me I had to be present to vote. So if I'm not going to be present, I do not vote on how. And so, but that's all part of, I think, getting a really healthy attitude, because hard stuff takes time and it's never a straight line.
Thank you for sharing. And I know that's a very personal journey, a perspective. And on the concept of control, what I loved from your book was learning about your preparation techniques, and you're a relentless preparer.
Yeah.
And for me, that is core to my resilience. You're bulletproof if you've done all of the prep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took a lot of inspiration.
It's good for the clients you serve, and really tough for the teams around you. But I have to say, it comes from even my earliest, as being a product of the 70s and the 80s, I was the only woman in engineering. And so, like it or not, when you're the only in a room, you are remembered, good or bad, for what you say. So at that time, to me, that preparation was like a shield, because I knew if I was going to say something, I wanted to be right. And now it was that right or wrong or fair? Maybe not, but it's what I did. Right. I thought, always be prepared. Well, so in the end, more than most people. Now, eventually over time, that would turn out to be a positive. And it roots to both a confidence factor, but I think for all of, again, people listening, this idea of preparation, it's the highest form of a compliment you can give someone, right? If I was actually on LinkedIn, I was putting some quotes that people, we can tell on Kindle what people underline, Big Brother is watching everywhere, okay? I don't know who did it, but I can see what the most underlined passages are. And one of them is, time is the most valuable thing someone can give you. Be sure you give them something in return. And, you prepared hard for this evening. And I know you did. You read the book. You thought about questions. I thought about, okay, what lessons will translate here? It's a form of a compliment to those listening to us, right? Hopefully they take it that way.
Thank you. All right. I am going to move to the floor now, because we've got lots of questions. So, Ginni, the first one I'll pose is, so for an organization the size of IBM, are there any considerations for transformation, pacing considerations for the transformation? Did you ever worry that if you changed too fast, it could destabilize the core. But if you change too slow, you would miss the market opportunities.
Precisely. So I always say I always had good ideas. My timing was not always correct, but I think that that is a big point. And I'll tell you one lesson I learned around that is that if you can, the more focus you put into what you're doing, the less risk that becomes the timing. So I just you with markets in particular, right? Just diagnosing, am I making a market or responding to a market? Even just diagnosing which of those two you're doing, you will take different actions, and then the timing isn't as deadly to you. So I learned a lot about that. So I'd say to whoever asked, yep, I'm sort of empathetic to the question. And you can address or reduce your risk management by focus, by diagnosing, making, or responding to a market. Very different activities and timing related with both of those kind of actions. But more often than not, I think I would have gone faster with fewer things. If I had to judge, more often than not, I probably would have went faster with fewer things than more things in parallel, right?
Okay. Okay. Next question, Ginny. So
I can't see the questions,
oh, you can't see them.
I
I'm gonna
can't see them for some reason. I can't. So you're looking, and I'm like, oh, is it?
It's okay. No. I'll read for you. So the next question is in reference to leading through change. And how do you balance being resolute with a vision while filtering and assessing feedback and without being blinded by bias?
Yeah, I I think that has a lot to do with the wide variety of input you get. I think it's a real danger to have an echo chamber of people around you that think like you or will tell you what they think they want you to hear. I really do see that as a real issue with a lot of leaders. And so I think that's the way to address that is the breadth and the kind of people. And you know, it's got a interesting thing I also learned over time. There was a one time when I was doing something really difficult, but I'm like, no, we're going to get this. We can do it. We can do it. We would keep trying and we weren't getting there. We try again and we weren't getting there. And harder we worked. And I kept getting offered help. And I kept saying, no, we got it. We're going to get it. We got it. We got it. We got it. And wasn't coming. It wasn't getting done. I finally took the help someone wanted to give me. But it really taught me that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. So you say about how do you get input, right? So sometimes if you don't know the answer, and I see so many people still make that mistake today, really senior people, that they will not, I don't know why. I start trying to say, this is not a weakness to ask for help. Get help. Instead, you're going to fail alone versus, succeed as a team or however you want to say it. And that would be related to that question, that point of always remember to ask for help as a sign of strength, not a weakness. And so as you get these inputs, so the way to avoid that is really look for diversity. And I don't mean gender just alone, but in the people in those networks that you cultivate and get as much external as you can, not filtered is the other part.
It's incredibly valuable advice. There's another personal question, Ginny, on mentorship. So can you share some perspective around how you identified, approached, or recruited your mentors and or trusted contacts to bounce ideas and views around with and share your vulnerabilities? What did that process look like for you?
Well, first off, it's kind of what I said a minute ago, Lauren. Honestly, for those again listening, I think do not live in a world that you think that, oh, gee, I had one sponsor and they like pulled you up through a business or something like that. It's just anyone that you show you're willing to learn from will be your mentor. Okay. So that's point one. Just ask questions. People will be your mentor. But I have a more important point I wanted to make for those who are mentoring other people on the phone, that to me, what all those people did for me, they believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Hmm.
And I think that's the really valuable thing most quote mentors will do. Yes, you can learn, but most of them that are giving you time, right? They're doing it because they see something in you. And this idea that always remember to believe in someone more than they believe in themselves is like the greatest gift that you as a mentor can give to a mentee uh, that's out there. And I suspect if you thought about it, right, over your career, is that what in fact mentors did for you, right? They
Absolutely.
believe in you, right? And
Absolutely.
so I think if you really think about that and do it for people, you'll really be doing them a great, great development, service.
Shifting gears a little bit, Ginny. So there's a question here about, we've received, this person said, we've received a lot of great lessons here about transformation and transforming large corporations. But do you have any views on how this applies to smaller firms or startups? Do these same principles apply?
Yeah, look, right now, I do a small firm. We
Mm.
have 110 is a startup, and is in fact, I mean, myself, Ken Chenault from American Express, a fellow named Ken Frazier from who ran Merck, the drug company. Okay, so there's 3 CEOs, but the rest of it's a startup, and that we chair it. And it's a small group, but I believe those same principles really apply with the extra emphasis on focus. You just don't have a luxury. And that's a very interesting, point that we constantly, even with my small team, right, 100 people, are always on focus, focus, focus. Stay, prove it in one spot before you go on to too much. And, pick your market segment, et cetera. So I actually believe, and I really tried to write this with an eye towards any size business. Because look, I think running a small business can be just as hard as running a big business. I would say to people that, look, I was trained to fly a 747. I couldn't fly a little plane, right? Not a chance. Oh, it doesn't have all that instrumentation. You mean, what do you mean? I gotta do it myself? Couldn't do it. Or vice versa, right? So I, I think, and I hope those lessons are, I think, pretty battle tested to be both small and big. It's just the focus element.
You touched on 110, and I'd love to just talk about that for the next few minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, maybe
Um,
we'll wrap up on that.
we will wrap up on that. I think, since you founded 110 since retiring it from IBM, and it's a coalition of more than 70 companies now committed to hiring and upskilling Black talent. What inspired you? What are you doing? How is it going?
Okay, so before you think this is just for Black talent, what I'm about to tell you, that's just a segment back to focus. This
Mm.
is a talent strategy for your entire business. And there were 3 moments in life that inspired me to do what I do today. Again, when you write a book and you have to look back, all of a sudden things make sense. But I mentioned to you, when we had no money and were homeless, and my mother had no education, she had to go and get a little bit of. She only had high school. In America, we call high school. She got a little bit of education, could get a better job, a little bit more, another. She never did get a college degree, but that taught me my mom was actually pretty smart, but access and aptitude were different. So put that one learning, meaning my mom had a lot of aptitude, but no access to things others had. And that's true for many people around the world. Okay. God spreads aptitude equally, access, not so much. Put that aside. Through my time as CEO, I would learn another fundamental truth. And it was just serendipity. I would be looking for cyber skills. They didn't exist in 2012, 13, 14. Someone said, hey, we're going to work with a high school and a community college, and we're going to give them some help on curriculum and mentors and on cyber work. And we'll hire a few of them and see how it goes. Fine. It's corporate social responsibility work. Fine. I come back. How many did we hire? 3, 4. I'm like, wait a second. I need 10,000 cyber people. And why have you only hired 3 or 4? They said, well, they don't have college degrees. No PhD, no college degree. That's all we hire. I said, but they can do the job. Okay. Interesting. Just like my mom, access and aptitude. And what I would see, and this would take me on a long journey that would prove that, hey, be careful. Where people start should not determine where they have to end. And these were just people that didn't have those opportunities before. They were just as smart as everyone else. And when we would go on to measure this, that they were as loyal, more retentive, performed as well, took more education. I'm like, okay, what do I not like? And more diverse. So what do I not like about this equation? I love this equation. So it would be, wait, instead of hiring for a degree, this is how we coined it. We should hire for their skill. They had learned a skill to start. And so it was skills first, hire for skills versus just a degree. And and then this would grow on the wake of in America. There was a murder of George Floyd, a Black man, that was really kind of a watershed moment for racism. And my colleague said, look, we should do what business does best is hire people. Economic opportunity is the best solution to racism and inequality. And it is. And so, but people have to have a skill. Well, skills first was that answer because 80% of Americans that are Black do not have a degree. 80%. And 65% of all people in all developed countries, not just America, do not have college degrees. Okay. And in my work, what I have found, like my journey at IBM, because once I sort of saw this and I saw, wow, there's a whole new diverse talent pool out there I can go after. I then said, well, okay, how many of my jobs don't really need a college degree to start? Let's do the work. And I had a fantastic HR team who took 5 years to rewrite everything for skills. But it turned out that half the jobs were over-credentialed. One half required a college degree to get started when they did not. And I have now found that true in every big company I have worked in. Okay. And I doubt but I would bet any amount of money it's true in every company. And so it just became an easy thing to do. Check off. Assume if you had a college degree, you have good soft skills, you got good problem solving, you've got this. It's just not true, unfortunately. So it to me is a way, again, I believe in diversity is a better workforce. This is a brand new talent pool. We're all starving for labor. Wow, here's a huge pool that's untapped. And the ability to me, if you believe in things like democracy, people want a better future. This is a way to give so many people a better future. And I also learned when I had to transform the IBM skills, what do they all have in common? It's this propensity to want to learn. All of them. That's all that was a common thread across all. And given that tech is changing every 3 to 5 years, it doesn't matter what skill you have when I hire you today. Anyways, I'm going to be retraining you. So I think I've now concluded skills first is a talent strategy for every company, everyone. This is not about just underrepresented groups. Doesn't matter. Everyone should be incented, paid, increased, recognized for skills, not just a degree or the experience alone that they've had. So that is a movement that I really do. I feel like we've created a movement. I think we've made a lot of progress just on 1 million over 10 years. We're at a couple 100,000 now. But the bigger point is all these companies changing their hiring in the way they look at the workforce. And I just think with AI, we'll end where we started. The benefit of AI can be so I'm optimistic, even though I told you all the things to watch about how you roll it out. I think it could be the greatest equalizer we've ever seen. The studies show it's what I saw a decade ago. I can take if I can call it this, the bottom 2 quartiles of my workforce and move them up a quartile because they have someone assisting them in doing their job now, that AI. Any kind of job that is more decision-making, I need information, it's not routine. This can help them do that job. And now they can make more money, they can do a more important job, they can feel better about what they do. So I'm hopeful that AI can, if we manage it right, will turn out to be a great equalizer for people in society in general, instead of have and have not, which is what others speak of. So that's all related to my views. You asked me about 110, and I gave you a whole speech about skills first, which I hope I converted everyone listening to go back and start that journey. It's a journey. I mean, it took me a decade. It's a journey because it's not as easy as changing requirements. You have to be willing to have a build versus buy mentality on talent for a very long period.
Well, thank you for sharing, Ginni. And it sounds like 110 is your most important role yet. And you're operating at a scale actually much larger than IBM. So I wish you the best of luck with it. And I thank you for your time today. for what has been an incredibly inspiring and important discussion. For all of those on the call, it's incredibly timely as they help steward their organizations through so much external change and internal change. It has been a real honor, Ginni. Thank you. And with that, thank you all for joining, and I will close the call. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.